Parliament is back with the voice and housing legislation set to be the main battlegrounds. Barbenheimer surpasses $1.5 billion at the box office worldwide, and novel ways to stay cool. Welcome to Fear and Greed Business News, Australia's best business podcast. It's Tuesday, the 1st of August, 2023. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, I'm looking forward to today's interview. You're speaking with Chris Lovejoy, who is a global leader in terms of cybersecurity. She is Global Security and Resilience Leader for Kyndryl, which is the world's largest provider of IT infrastructure services.
It is quite the title, but in a sense, it actually explains where cybersecurity is going, particularly with artificial intelligence involved. So I talked to Chris all about how artificial intelligence is impacting cyber attacks and then what companies need to do about it. It's the next evolution, I suppose, in cyber attacks. It's a really fascinating chat.
Yeah, and when you consider that Chris was the general manager of this at IBM and the global cybersecurity leader at EY and a member of the World Economic Forum's Centre for Cybersecurity and now at Kyndryl, a supporter of this podcast, it is quite the CV, isn't it?
Quite the resume.
Now, Sean, on to the main story this morning. Parliament resumed yesterday following the midwinter break, and we can expect to hear plenty about the voice referendum and the federal government's housing bill.
That's right. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese kicked things off by accusing the opposition of making a political point at the expense of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people by campaigning against an Indigenous voice to Parliament. We're going to hear lots on that. The Greens said the Prime Minister has not responded to a request for a meeting about the $10 billion housing fund bill. If it fails to pass the Senate this sitting, it could be used as a double dissolution trigger by the government. Another issue that is going to dominate over the next few weeks. And of course, yesterday, the first day back, there were tributes to former Labor leader Simon Crean from both sides of the aisle.
And Sean, former Prime Minister Scott Morrison also took a fair swipe, had a bit of a crack at the government and the Robo-Debt Royal Commission.
Yeah, he didn't hold back. Morrison said the findings against him were disproportionate, wrong, unsubstantiated and absurd, and accused Labor of abusing the commission process to carry out a political lynching. It's interesting, that language. I think I've heard it before somewhere. Morrison also accused Labor of rank hypocrisy, given it, when in opposition, went to both the 2016 and 2019 federal elections, counting the forecast budget savings from robo-debt in its own costings promises. Morrison likened the Royal Commission to the inquiry into his secret ministries, saying Labor was determined to tear him down to detract from his legacy of steering the nation through the coronavirus pandemic.
Right. And finally, Sean, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said the whole nation is thinking of the 4 servicemen who are presumed dead after a helicopter crash late Friday night.
Yes, Albanese said the 4 dedicated their lives to keeping us safe, and he sent the nation's deepest sympathies to their families and friends. Opposition leader Peter Dutton called it a tragic day for our nation. Defence Minister Richard Marles said the search and rescue mission had become a recovery operation to retrieve the bodies of the aircrew whose MRH-90 Taipan helicopter crashed off the Queensland coast. A portion of the wreckage has been recovered, but the majority of it remains underwater.
Yeah, it's a terrible story, that one. Now, Sean, how did local markets perform yesterday?
It was a funny sort of day. The S&P ASX 200 opened much higher following Wall Street's strong weekend, then tumbled before recouping some of the losses to finish a little bit above where it began at 7,410 points. With the June half earnings season set to kick off next week, and of course the big decision on interest rates this afternoon, the market was pretty much in a holding pattern. The healthcare stocks did best in general, and the consumer staples sector did worst. Both those sectors are known as defensive, and the fact that one was best and the other worst suggests there wasn't really a lot of direction yesterday. Among the large caps, the banks were flat or a bit higher. Same deal for the big 3 iron ore miners. Woolworths was the worst performer of the large caps, dropping 1.3%, while Coles was down 1%. Ramsay Healthcare had a good day, jumping more than 2%, while health leader CSL was up 0.7%. The tech stocks were mixed. Telstra finished down 0.5%. Certainly worth a mention is Silver Lake Resources for a couple of reasons. Silver Lake Resources, Michael, mines gold and copper, not silver.
It's one of those easy triggers for me. Name your company after what it does. Does Silver Lake Resources mine Silver Lakes? No, it does not. Anyway, I've said my piece. Go on, Sean.
Well, its share price fell 20% yesterday, and that's even though it posted record quarterly production of gold and copper.
Well, now I feel bad.
It was easily the worst performing ASX 200 stock yesterday. Best was Alumina, up nearly 3%, but when your best performing stock is up nearly 3%, it means it wasn't a great day on the market. Of course, away from equities, the big guessing game today is what will the Reserve Bank Board do when it meets this morning? Seems very little certainty about what will happen. We'll find out at 2:30 p.m. this afternoon. Either interest rates or the benchmark rate will go up by 25 basis points, or the board will keep rates on hold.
And what's happening in international markets?
Beijing announced more measures yesterday to support the ailing property sector and boost consumption in China, and that really helped rally equities in the region. In a sense, on the back of that, the Australian market was a bit weak. Meanwhile, China's manufacturing activity contracted for a fourth month in July, while non-manufacturing activity grew slower than expected. That was the bad news. In commodity markets, oil has had its best month in more than a year on signs that the market is tightening. That month, of course, being last month, July. West Texas Intermediate, which is a benchmark for US crude, rallied 14% last month. Not bad at all. And the Aussie dollar is trading around 67 US cents, Michael.
Does that mean the petrol prices will be heading up soon, Sean?
Yes, it does. But I don't really understand. I have tried to understand the relationship between the two.
Yeah. And I think we've made predictions in the past before and they haven't quite worked out, have they?
Yeah.
We'll be back in a moment with the rest of the day's business news. Sean, the Albanese government faces its first industrial dispute by federal workers as public sector unions protest against a 10.5% offer over 3 years and the rejection of a 4-day workweek trial.
Everyone wants a 4-day work week. I want a 4-day work week, I've got to say. When you're a 6-day-a-week show, it's hard. But
yeah, that's cutting your days down by a third.
Yeah,
is that right? Yeah.
Well, 2 on 6 is a third. I think that's right, Michael.
God, I'm not having a good day. Please go on.
The Community and Public Sector Union will start 2 weeks of auxiliary code bans at Surpasses Australia today, in which members will refuse to complete codes that allow management to track the tasks of individual employees at any given time, according to the Financial Review. Now, the action comes after 93% of union members voted in favour of a protected action ballot to support the auxiliary ban codes. The CPSU also won strong support for unlimited work stoppages for periods between 1 hour and 24 hours. We'll see how that one works out. The union is seeking a 20% increase made up of a 9% first year increase, 6% in second year and 5% in the third year. Now, Finance Minister Katie Gallagher is actually a former CPSU organiser. She said that the 20% claim is not affordable.
All right. And now Origin Energy says revenue fell during the June quarter thanks to falling prices, adding that it is getting much higher gas prices offshore than locally, reflecting government-enforced caps, Sean.
Yes, this is the pointy end of all that carry on late last year, and the government introduced caps to keep prices down. But for Origin shareholders, it's not necessarily a good thing. A jump in East Coast gas prices, though, did help offset the impact of declining LNG prices. Origin is the subject of a near $19 billion bid from 2 North American companies, and it said the average price paid by domestic gas customers is still less than half the rate paid in export markets. Production at its Australia Pacific LNG venture in Queensland rose 10% in the June quarter compared to the March quarter. That was good news for the full financial year. Sales are up 21% from a 3% dip in output.
Lynas Rare Earths will withhold a portion of supply from the market as prices tumble for the minerals which are used in wind turbines, electronics and military applications.
The world's biggest supplier of rare earths outside of China said the lower prices reflects weaker demand from Japan and an oversupply in China. Lynas said its stockpiling was also insurance against potential teething problems next year when it starts refining in Kalgoorlie in Western Australia. Now, that Kalgoorlie plant is in response to regulatory changes in Malaysia, changes which has really forced Lynas to rethink its processing of rare earths, and that's why it's building this new facility in Kalgoorlie. Lynas's share price rose 2.6% yesterday.
Infant formula group Bubs Australia's revenue last financial year dropped 29% as stock build-ups and its dispute with its biggest Daigou partner in China continues.
Bubs Australia's share price is about 1/3 of what it was a year ago and about 85% below its peak pre-COVID. Yesterday, it said it earned less than $14 million in revenue from China in the 2023 financial year, down from $54 million a year before. Now, Bubs is suing two entities associated with the Daigou AZ Capital. What a Daigou do is kind of an informal relationship whereby the Daigou facilitates the sending of product from Australia to China. It fell apart, of course, during COVID because there was huge restrictions on what could be sent overseas, and it really hasn't come back for a bunch of companies, including Bubs. Anyway, Bubs is suing two entities associated with its Daigou partner over alleged debts of nearly $6 million. Meanwhile, its Chinese distributor is seeking to claw back more than $20 million from the troubled formula company in refunds for aging stock sitting unsold in its warehouses. Last week, the Bubs board, led by Katrina Rathie, survived a spill motion. It ain't pretty at Bubs.
No, it certainly isn't, is it? Considering this was a company that had some fantastic headlines not so long ago, and now it's not looking quite so good.
No, it's not.
Now, Sean, this is an interesting one. Australian nickel and lithium miner IGO has posted a 19% jump in fourth quarter earnings, boosted by record production at its flagship Greenbushes lithium mine in Western Australia.
Cracking name, Greenbushes lithium mine.
It feels like whoever named it is just looking around going, what can we call this? Blue sky, Greenbushes lithium mine, that's it.
Yes, indeed. Well, the June quarter result would have been better, but for lower commodity prices and poor output at its lithium refiner, as well as the performance of IGO's Nova nickel mine. But the announcement triggered a 4.6% fall in the group's share price. Battery-grade lithium and nickel are essential commodities for decarbonisation. They're heavily sought after by electric car makers. Now, IGO, which owns a majority stake with a Chinese company in Greenbushes, said the asset generated a record quarterly production result exceeding guidance.
Okay, turning to international news now, and 45 people were killed and over 135 injured when a militant detonated himself at a rally organised by a key party in Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif's coalition.
The blast ripped through a gathering in a province near Afghanistan held by a hardline Islamic party. Scores of people were rushed to nearby hospitals, some in helicopters. Local media said initial police investigations indicate the Islamic State group is behind the attack. The militant attack is adding to the twin political and economic crises in Pakistan. The government has just secured a bailout package from the International Monetary Fund after a long delay, while former Prime Minister Imran Khan's political party has buckled under an army-driven crackdown before the national vote.
A bit of a change of pace now with this one, Sean, and onto one of your favourite topics, really, isn't it? The Barbenheimer phenomenon continues with the two movies, Barbie and Oppenheimer, already taking more than $1 billion in worldwide ticket sales.
Yes, that's about 1.5 billion Aussie. Now, I'll do this story in US dollars because that's kind of where they're quoted. So its opening weekend was 162 million US dollars. It's now up to $351 million in US and Canadian theatres. That will soon make it the biggest box office hit of the summer. The first 11 days in theatres has also outpaced The Dark Knight, which means it's the best ever Warner Brothers release. Every day it's played, Barbie has made at least $20 million.
Wow. Have you seen it yet?
No.
Oh, you're all talk. You were
know.
all talking about this 2 weeks ago. I'm going straight out to see Barbie. I'm going straight out to see Oppenheimer. Well, I think I was the one that said I'm going straight out to see Oppenheimer. No, haven't seen anything.
Yeah,
I didn't even get to see Indiana Jones when I was at the movies.
Ah, I saw that one. I did see that one.
Oh, was it any good?
Nah.
Wow.
It was fine. It was okay. Anyway, Barbie's made $122 million internationally over the weekend. So its global tally is now at $775 million. Meanwhile, Universal Pictures' Oppenheimer is performing kind of more like a superhero movie rather than a 3-hour film about scientists. According to Bloomberg, it's made $174 million in the US, an additional $72 million in international cinemas over the last weekend, all up about $400 million globally.
Finally, Sean, there's been plenty in the news about the extreme heat throughout North America and Europe. Fortunately, fortunately, Tokyo's annual Extreme Heat Countermeasures exhibition was on last week with plenty of innovative ways. And a lot of them are actually fairly kind of logical and fairly interesting, exciting, but there's always some kind of more unusual ones as well, aren't there? Some ways of keeping people cool.
Yes, so this extreme heat countermeasures exhibition is quite a thing in Japan because it has one of the world's oldest populations, and older people are particularly at risk from extreme temperatures. In fact, in Japan in 2020, 86% of heat wave deaths were among people over the age of 65. It's not just a Japanese thing. Last week, the US President Joe Biden said the nation is spending $100 billion a year to protect Americans from extreme heat. So with all that in mind, let me tell you about some of the more popular items last week. There was fan-based cooling clothing. So it's kind of fans embedded in clothing, which accelerates airflow to dry sweat and cool you down.
Is that like remember those caps that you could get with a little fan built into the...
Hold on. Another one was safety helmets with a built-in fan. So that's exactly what you're talking about.
A safety helmet, does that mean that you can wear it on like the work site as well?
Well, to be honest, this is for older people who suffer from heat stroke. They tend to fall. So a safety helmet has this contraption has the double benefit of kind of protecting heads and having a fan to cool you down.
Oh, that is genius.
It is. There's 2 meter high fans, and the funniest thing about that, it's worth looking up. As people would walk past them, you could see them sort of shift a step to the left or the right, depending on which way they were walking, as the air blasted them. I don't know how practical they'd be. Then there were wearables that basically, start beeping, saying you're at risk of heat stroke. But perhaps my favourite, there were mesh vests for dogs, and they carry cold packs. So the doggies would have the mesh vests on, and either side have pockets, and you put cold packs in them.
Is that like a mesh singlet for
sort of
like what nightclub wear and kind of? Well, Sean, you've certainly pulled one out there to finish on. That is that set a very high bar.
Yeah, for the rest of the week.
Yeah, indeed. Up next is the Fear and Greed Daily Interview. This is a cracker. You're speaking with Chris Lovejoy, Global Security and Resilience Leader for Kyndryl, one of our supporters and the world's largest provider of IT infrastructure services.
It's really interesting. It's all about what happens when AI is embedded in cyber attacks and what's that mean for businesses, for individuals, and how should they respond to it. Fascinating chat.
Yeah, it sure is. It's coming up next in the Fear and Greed playlist on your podcast platform or at fearandgreed.com.au. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Tuesday, the 1st of August, 2023. Make sure you're following the podcast and join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, X, and Facebook. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was Fear and Greed Business News. Have a great day.